So many have argued, and many will argue, that income inequality is a moral issue. That is to say, a rich country like the United States shouldn't tolerate the level of poverty that we see, and this is a problem. And income inequality is a difficult topic because a lot of people have this vision in their mind that people that got rich, they work hard, they're smarter, and they should be able to be rewarded. The incentive to work hard is really important to motivate people, and that's absolutely true. The incentive to work hard in order to get ahead is crucial, and we don't want to eliminate that, even if we try to address the problem of income inequality. But as a social problem, if the system is supposed to be working to distribute well-being to the citizenry and it's not, well, then we have a problem that we need to address one way or another. Rawls, this philosopher, I think his first name was John, he died just a couple years ago. Anyway, he is somewhat infamous for proposing a way of thinking about social justice and in general and income inequality in particular. And that is to say that in evaluating the system that we're considering, we should determine what is fair or not fair behind what he called a veil of ignorance. That is to say, we need to look at the distribution of well-being, and if the rules of the game. So the rewards to working hard, the ability to pass your wealth on to the next generation, the role of luck, all that. Look at the system. You need to evaluate the system behind a veil of ignorance of where you in particular are on the scale. We talk about. I had this uncle who had inherited all of his wealth, and he was well known as a partier and a bit of a yahoo. Even as a young person, I could tell that. Anyway, I was at dinner with him, and he's railing about how anybody that wants to work in the United States can find work. And this is in the 80s, in the middle of a pretty deep recession. And I'm thinking, yeah, easy for you to say. You never had to look for a job. But when you're super rich, you see the system as, well, you're super rich because you're really smart. And, so that's fair. And of course, when you're poor, super poor, you see all these people that are much richer, and you have a tendency to say, the system's rigged against me. And both at every point in the spectrum, in order to evaluate the system, we need to do so behind this veil of ignorance. And there's been some interesting work. Dan Ariely, who's an economist that works in the area of behavioral economics, which he publishes a lot in journals of psychology, actually. He's done some really interesting work on perceptions of inequality and how different those perceptions are, and from reality, A, and B, he's found that both conservatives and liberals in the United States actually have a similar vision of what degree of inequality would be a just amount of inequality, but it's nevertheless, because very few people actually have explored the data enough to understand what's going on with income inequality in the United States. You can have this ideal that's very far from where we are now, but because of your actual ignorance, not a veil of ignorance, you can nevertheless fail to grasp just how far from the ideal we in the United States are right now. We're quite unique among rich industrial countries in the amount of inequality we're willing to tolerate. And again, this is a decision by voters in this country. And if achievement is solely due to work effort, fine. But if you're rich, your kids get to go to good schools because schools are funded by local taxpayers. And if you're poor, you go to crappy schools because your local taxpayers are poor, and thus you have no opportunity to get ahead because you've gone to poor schools. Actually, a lot of people say what looks like racial discrimination isn't so much racial discrimination as the fact that minority groups are disproportionately poor and they have access to incredibly bad schooling, and so that makes it hard to earn a living. Anyway, if where you're born determines where you end up to a large degree, well, we got a problem. We have this myth in the United States that, there's this, a lot of income mobility. Yeah, people are born poor, but through their hard work they get rich. And actually, in Europe, the social democracies in Europe that are much more generous in terms of their safety nets and much more intrusive in their governments, there's actually more income mobility now there than there is here. So there's a lot of people that have recognized a problem. What to do about it, even recognizing the problem, what to do about it is a tougher question still.